It was a Friday evening. I was working late in an empty office on the 14th floor. The building was absolutely dead, with only the low hum of the ventilation system breaking the silence. Outside, a massive rainstorm was raging. I was exhausted. I saved the last of my documents, turned off the monitor, and had just put on my jacket. At that exact moment, the silence was shattered by my cell phone ringing. There was no name on the screen, not even a string of digits, just the words "unknown caller." I let out a heavy sigh and accepted the call. "Hello?" I asked in a tired voice.
"Hello, I need help, please. I'm begging you, help me."
A man's voice blurted out. It was raged, broken, and full of tears. I rolled my eyes. Another prank call. "Look, if you have an actual emergency, call 911 or an ambulance. I can't help you," I said drearily and hung up the phone. I shoved the phone into my pocket and walked toward the elevators. But less than 5 minutes later, the same unknown number rang again. "Now you're really gonna get it," I thought angrily and answered the call. "Hello?" I practically shouted. Surprisingly, there was silence on the other end. But then, in the background, I heard voices and muffled screams. My anger vanished instantly. My stomach dropped. Maybe I was wrong to yell at him. Clearly, he really was in some kind of trouble. "Hello?" I asked, softer this time.
"Please."
The guy's breathless voice came back. "All right," I said, leaning against the wall. "You have 5 minutes."
"It all started 3 days ago."
He began speaking rapidly.
"I was asleep in my apartment. At exactly midnight, I was woken up by a call. Blocked number. At first, there was just white static, and then a hoarse, grating man's voice whispered, 'Your deepest wish for a precious price. What do you want?' I thought it was someone's sick joke. I looked at the screen. The call timer showed we had been talking for over 5 minutes, even though only 10 seconds had passed. I got annoyed. My computer had just died, and I decided to play along with this prankster. "All right," I said into the receiver. "I want the most powerful laptop in the world. How are we paying for it? Cash, or should I transfer some crypto?" The voice replied instantly, "A deepest wish for a precious price. A laptop for your soul. You have exactly 3 days." The call abruptly disconnected. I just scoffed in the dark. Yeah, whatever you say," I muttered, threw the phone on the nightstand, and went back to sleep.
The guy on the line let out a heavy exhale.
But in the morning, my doorbell rang. There was a black box sitting on my porch. Inside was a laptop. But how is that even possible? I never gave that voice my address. From that day forward, my life turned into a living hell. Things in my apartment started moving completely on their own. Constant rings at my doorbell. But when I looked through the peephole, no one was there. At night, dishes would shatter in the kitchen, and every single day, my phone would ring. Blocked number. I wouldn't pick it up, but that hoarse voice would whisper from the speaker, "Soon, very soon." And today, the 3rd day arrived.
The guy's voice broke into a quiet whimper.
"I woke up about 2 hours ago, completely tied to my bed. My ropes were biting into my wrists, but I wasn't alone. Sitting at the foot of my bed in the pitch darkness was something. It was completely black like a shadow, and it crawled up toward me. I could really feel the ice-cold edge of something sharp pressing slowly against my throat. A thin, freezing line of sting that made me realize one wrong breath and it would all be over. It leaned right into my ear and whispered, "Time is up. You will live till midnight.
Call someone, tell them everything, pass the burden. Otherwise, your loved ones will die and you will die very slowly and painfully.
Right now, I'm lying in my bed. I'm still tied up. This creature,
The guys whispered.
it's holding the phone to my ear right now. It forced me to dial a completely random string of numbers, and I got through to you. I fulfilled the condition. I told you this story. I passed the curse, and tonight at midnight, it will call you. I'm so sorry. Forgive me.
The line went dead. He hung up. I stared blankly at my phone screen. Sick bastard. Played it perfectly. I was shaking a little bit, but I forced myself to laugh it off. I went down to the parking garage and got into my car. The entire drive home, I tried to push this nonsense out of my head. When I finally got to my apartment, I double-checked all the deadbolts. I took a shower, turned on every single light, and sat down in front of the TV. I kept convincing myself it was just an elaborate prank. Soon, pure exhaustion took over, and I passed out right on the couch to the mumbling of the news. I was violently jolted awake by a sharp vibration. My phone was buzzing aggressively on the glass coffee table. I snapped my eyes open. The TV was turned off. For some reason, all the lights in my apartment had gone out. The room was submerged in absolute darkness. Flashing on the display were the words, "Unknown caller." I threw a quick glance at the clock on the microwave. It read exactly 12 a.m. Midnight. My heart plummeted. With sweaty palms, I reached for the phone and pressed answer. White static word from the speaker, and then a hoarse, grating voice.
Your deepest wish for a precious prize. What do you want?
I jumped off the couch. I was shaking with animalistic terror. I remembered the guy from the office. "No," I screamed into the receiver. "No, I don't want anything from you. Go to hell!" A long pause hung on the line, just the static hissing, and then the voice let out a low chuckle.
A deepest wish for a prize. You need nothing as you wish. Nothing for your soul. 3 days.
The call disconnected. 2 days have passed since that moment. My apartment has turned into a nightmare. I hear footsteps at night. I see shadows. Yesterday, the massive bathroom mirror shattered into a million pieces. Today is the 3rd day. In just a few hours, midnight will strike. I'm sitting in the corner of my room, gripping a baseball bat. My hands are shaking. I'm losing my mind with fear. I want to leave. I really, truly want to leave. And now I know there is only one possible way to save myself. I'm sorry, but I just needed to share this story with someone. I'm taking out my cell phone right now. I'm dialing a random number. Who knows, maybe tonight my call will come through to you. I always thought the supernatural completely bypassed my family. I believed scary stories were just figments of active imaginations, until recently. A few weeks ago, I went to visit my dad. He lives in Columbus, Ohio now, while I stayed out on the West Coast. We hadn't seen each other in a year and a half, so we stayed up late catching up. We started reminiscing about the late 90s, back when our whole family lived in Portland, Oregon. There was one question that had always bothered me. My dad had everything in Portland, a beautiful 4-bedroom house, connections, a great life. But in 1999, he suddenly dropped everything and fled to Ohio. I never dared to ask why, assuming it was personal. But this time, being a grown man, I finally asked. I was not prepared for the answer he gave me. Here is what he told me. Back in those days, he was a long-haul trucker. That winter, he took a high-paying load deep into Montana. The winter was brutal. He delivered the cargo, unloaded, and headed back. But on the way home, the interstate was shut down due to massive snowdrifts and avalanches. He had to take a detour. It was a narrow, godforsaken state route cutting straight through a dense national forest. Dad had been driving on it for about 30 miles. There wasn't a soul around. No oncoming traffic, nobody in the rearview mirror. Just towering black trees and falling snow in the headlights. Dad was squinting at the road when he noticed a shape on the shoulder. At first he thought it was just a large snow-covered tree stump, but as he got closer, he realized it was a person. Who in their right mind wanders the woods in the blizzard, he thought. He hit the brakes, but the massive 18-wheeler slid on the ice for another 50 yards before coming to a halt. He looked in the mirror. The person was just standing there, unmoving. Dad rolled down the window, letting in the freezing wind, and yelled, "Hey buddy, hop in. I'll give you a ride. You gonna freeze." The figure turned slowly and began walking toward the truck at a leisurely pace. Dad said his instinct kicked in before his eyes did. Something was fundamentally wrong. The guy was dressed completely inappropriately for the weather. A gray hoodie, jeans, and a Converse sneakers. It was sub-zero outside. When the stranger stepped up to the cab window, the interior light hit his face. Dad's breath caught in his throat. The guy's eyes were inhuman. They were massive, 3 times larger than normal eyes, pitch black with no whites, and his mouth, his upper teeth looked like jagged needles protruding unnaturally over his lower lip. Dad instantly rolled up the window, slammed the truck into gear, and floored the gas pedal. The massive diesel engine roared, and the truck lurched forward. He checked the side mirror, expecting to see the figure shrinking in the distance, but the guy was running behind him. Dad accelerated the truck to 45 miles per hour on an icy road. It was suicide, but the creature kept pace. It was running with impossible speed, its movements a blur. Then, another figure burst out from the tree line. Then another. Soon, 5 of these things were chasing the multi-ton truck, running alongside the trailer in absolute silence. My dad was terrified. He was a tough, grown man, but he said tears were streaming down his face from pure animalistic dread. He pushed the truck to its limits, praying he wouldn't slide into the ditch. He doesn't even remember how he made it out of these woods. The creatures only fell back when the flickering lights of a rundown, isolated truck stop appeared ahead. Dad flew into a parking lot, killed the engine, and ran inside. He bought a coffee, downed it, and with a shaking voice told the owner everything. The old man just chuckled. He said it was highway hypnosis, playing tricks with the shadows and exhaustion. Sleep it off in your cab, buddy. Your mind is just playing tricks on you. Dad paid for parking, locked the truck doors from the inside, and crawled into a sleeper cab in the back. He woke up a few hours later, needing to use the restroom. It was pitch black outside, and the blizzard has worsened. To see anything and make a run for the building, he climbed into a driver's seat, turned the ignition key, and flipped on the headlights. Then, he hit the windshield wipers to push away the thick layer of snow. The sweep of the wipers revealed a sight that made his heart stop. They were there. Standing in the glare of the high beams were the exact same creatures, but now there were at least 10 of them. They were lined up in a perfect semicircle right in front of the truck's grill, and all of them were staring directly at him. Their giant pitch-black eyes absorbed the light, reflecting nothing. Deadlocked eyes with the one standing in the center. From the corner of its mouth, dripping slowly down its cheek, was a thick trail of dark blood. Pure panic took over. Dad slammed his fist onto the steering wheel. The truck's massive air horn shattered the night silence. The deafening roar startled the creatures. They flinched and scattered chaotically, vanishing into the darkness of the storm. Dad didn't wait. He slammed it into gear and tore out of the gas station lot as fast as the truck would move. The most terrifying part, he said, was the rest of the drive. It was pitch dark, snow hammering the windshield, and absolutely nothing visible in the rear-view mirrors. He had no idea if they were running behind him again in the blind spots. He drove non-stop without blinking until he saw the city lights of Portland. After that run, my dad changed. He developed severe paranoia. He would wake up multiple times a night, just standing by the window staring outside. He was terrified that those things had followed the truck all the way to the city and figured out where we lived. Almost a year passed. It was New Year's Eve 1999. In the early evening, Dad stepped out onto the balcony of our third-floor apartment to smoke a cigarette. He looked down at the street and his blood ran cold. Standing directly under the yellow glow of the streetlight were them, 3 of them. They weren't moving. They just tilted their heads back, staring straight up at him with those massive, void-like eyes. Dad flew back inside, double-locked the balcony door, and drew every curtain in the house. He called a buddy of his and stayed on the phone with him until the sun came up, just to hear a human voice, just to feel like he wasn't alone. The very next day, he packed his bags, bought a one-way ticket, and flew to his relatives in Ohio. He sold the Portland house remotely a month later. He gave up his entire life just to be as far away from those woods as possible. Then my dad went silent, took a sip of his drink, and looked me dead in the eyes. "It's been only 20 years," he said quietly. "But you know what? Every time I drive on an empty highway at night, or just step out onto the balcony to smoke a cigarette, my chest tightens with this primal dread. I'm terrified that one day I'll look into the darkness and they'll be standing there again, that they finally found me." They say my home is my castle, but the thicker the walls, the more terrifying it is when the enemy turns out to be inside. Veronica was a normal woman, the life of the party. She lived in an old apartment complex on the outskirts of the city. But one day, 5 years ago, she vanished. She just packed her bags and left without saying goodbye. The neighbors gossiped for a bit, then forgot her. I bumped into her by accident 6 months ago. I was hiking deep in the woods and stumbled upon a small off-grid cabin. Veronica was living there like a hermit. She looked older, but she was happy to see the familiar face. We were drinking tea on a porch. Her cabin was cozy, but I noticed one odd detail. She had no indoor plumbing, no pipes anywhere. Water came from a well in baskets, and the restroom was an outhouse. "Must be tough without amenities," I asked. "Your old apartment had central heating?" A sewer system. Veronica's face changed. Her smile vanished. She put her mug down and her hands started to tremble. Amenities, she whispered. No, never again. You have no idea what can live inside those pipes. And then she told me why she ran away. I loved that apartment. 4th floor, bright kitchen, quiet neighbors. I lived there for 4 years in perfect peace. But in the 5th year, it started. I'm not a quiet person. I walk heavily, I watch TV loud, so I didn't notice it right away. It began while I was washing dishes. I turned off the tap to scrub the plate, and I heard it. A whisper. It wasn't coming from the hallway or the neighbors. It was coming from below, straight out of the kitchen sink drain. At first, it was just a gurgle, but then the sounds got sharper. It sounded like a child who had lost their voice. A wet, raspy whisper, amplified by the echo of a metal pipe. I leaned closer to the black hole of the drain. It smelled of dampness and rot, and the voice said, "It's so tight here. It's so dark. I can't get through." My heart dropped to my stomach. I thought maybe a child got stuck in the ventilation shaft, but the voice was too close, right under the metal grate. I called a plumber the next day. A big guy came over, shined a flashlight down there, ran a long metal snake into the pipe. "Got a clock, lady?" he asked. "There is someone in there," I said. He looked at me like I was crazy, but when he started pulling the snake back up, he frowned. The cable was covered in thick black slime that smelled like old blood, and the tip of the snake had scratches on it, deep gouges in the metal. "You got rats, probably. Mutants or something," he joked nervously, took a cash, and left very quickly. He clearly didn't want to stay there. After the plumber left, I decided to handle it myself. I bought the strongest drain cleaner I could find, industrial strength acid that dissolves hair and grease. I put on gloves and poured the entire bottle down the black throat of the sink. I expected fizzing or a sound of a clog breaking up. Instead, I heard coughing, a dry, hacking cough coming from the deep, and then thick yellow smoke billowed out of the drain. It didn't smell like chemicals, it smelled like burning skin. The sink started to vibrate, and that same voice, now filled with pain, hissed, "It burns. Why are you hurting me?" Terrified, I slammed a dinner plate over the drain and ran out of the kitchen. I could swear I heard someone weeping inside the pipes. It was quiet for a week. I almost calmed down, but then that night happened. There was a heat wave, and I left the bedroom door open for a draft. I woke up at 3 a.m. to a sound. It was coming from the kitchen, the sound of a fingernail tapping against the metal sink from the inside. I lay in the bed, paralyzed with terror, and then that voice again, louder, angrier. "Move over. I need room. Get this out of the way." The sound got louder, as if something massive was trying to squeeze through the narrow band of the pipe. The metal creaked. I didn't go to check. I tiptoed to the bedroom door and slammed it shut. I pushed my dresser against the door. I spent the rest of the night on the balcony, clutching a knife and staring at the door handle, praying it wouldn't turn. I thought I was going crazy. In the morning, I went to the neighbors. I asked about cults, about basement. They told me the basement was dry, just some rats occasionally. No one believed me. A month passed. Humans get used to anything. I decided it was the plumbing, water pressure, my nerves. That Sunday, I decided to cook steaks. I took a large piece of frozen meat and put it in the sink to defrost. I went to the living room to watch a show. An hour later, I came back to the kitchen. The meat was gone. Well, not gone, but it was smaller. The piece was halfway pulled into the drain hole, as if someone from below had grabbed it and was pulling it down. I got angry. I thought the water suction caused it. I grabbed the piece of meat and pulled. It didn't budge. It was stuck tight. I braced my foot against the cabinet and yanked with all my strength. There was a wet, squelching sound. The meat flew out of the pipe. I looked at it and screamed. The bottom part wasn't torn. It was not. There were clear marks of human teeth on it. And then, from the pipe came a deafening, furious shriek. "Give it back, it's mine!" The walls shook. I heard the pipes inside the walls start to hum and buckle. Plaster rained down. Something huge, incredibly strong, was tearing its way up, breaking plastic and metal to get to me. It smelled fresh food. I dropped everything. I ran out of the apartment in just my clothes, clutching only my keys and passport. I heard a pipe burst with a crash in the kitchen, and something heavy slapped on the floor. I sold the apartment through the realtor without stepping foot inside again. I let it go dirt cheap. The realtor said there was a sewer burst and the kitchen was wrecked, but the new tenants were happy with a low price. It was a young couple with a baby. Sometimes I think about them. I feel guilty, but I couldn't stay. Now I live here. No pipes, no drains, no darkness hiding under the sink. 5 years have passed, and I still wonder, what was it? And how hungry it is right now. I've always had a passion for urban exploration. I've crawled through almost every rotten factory and boarded up hospital within a 100-mile radius of my city. I even went to Centralia, Pennsylvania, the infamous ghost town where a coal mine fire had been burning underground for decades. I stood with the smoking earth behind me, and it was the greatest feeling of my life. I loved the adrenaline, but true primal terror didn't catch up with me in a famous ghost town. It found me right where my obsession began, in the deep woods near my grandmother's house. Every summer, my parents would send me to the grandmother's place in rural Appalachia. That's where I befriended a local kid named Dennis. He was the one who got me hooked on exploring. We used to crawl through old Cold War fallout shelters and abandoned mine shafts. About a month ago, Dennis texted me. He found something special, an untouched 1970s religious summer camp hidden deep in the valley, completely forgotten by civilization. I took a few days off work, packed my gear, and drove out to meet him. When we forced our way through the overgrown gates of the complex, I realized Dennis wasn't exaggerating. It was a time capsule. A massive gymnasium consumed by black mold, classrooms with rotting chalkboards, yellowed motivational posters still clinging to the walls, and workbooks scattered across the floor. Frost covered the shattered windows, and the air was thick with the smell of decay and asbestos. I took a ton of amazing photos that day. I was thrilled. The best part of urbex is forcing open doors that have been locked for decades. On the second day, we found the basement of the main building. We used bolt cutters to snap a rusted padlock. Down there, we found old medical supply crates full of expired morphine and strange 1970s pharmaceuticals. I stuffed a whole bag full of souvenirs. Before leaving, we decided to check the indoor pool wing. The pool was drained, lined with cracked white tiles. Above the deep end hung an old faded banner. "Yours is the future." I wanted to take a cool selfie with it. When I pushed open the peeling blue door leading to the pool, my breath hitched. Hanging right over the empty concrete pit was the corpse of a young woman. She was suspended against the backdrop of that faded banner. At first, I was startled, but I didn't panic. In places like this, you occasionally stumble across victims of crime or drifters, but as we got closer, things got very weird. Around her neck was a heavy metal collar. Attached to it was a thick, rusted chain. The chain was straight up, hooked onto a steel beam on the ceiling, 4 stories high, right where a massive spotlight used to hang. This wasn't here yesterday when we scouted the outside of the building. I just couldn't fathom how it was physically possible. How could anyone without a massive extension ladder climb 4 stories up and secure a heavy black chain over a drop like that? But in that moment, logic turned off. My inner photographer took over. The girl looked young, with long pitch black hair. I pulled out my camera, intending to take a picture that would freeze the blood in your veins. I raised the lens, and in that exact moment, the chain snapped. The corpse plummeted to the bottom of the pool. The sound was sickening. A wet slap followed by a loud crunch of breaking bones that echoed off the tiled walls. You have no idea how terrifying it was. Dennis, who had been timidly standing off to the side, suddenly dropped to his knees at the edge of the pool and started crying. He was sobbing loudly, his face buried in his hands. And me, I don't know what came over me. Something pulled me downward. I climbed down the ladder into the empty pool and walked toward her. Her broken body lay on the filthy, shattered tile. Her face was surprisingly beautiful, untouched by decay. I stared at her for a few seconds, and suddenly, my heart stopped. Her toe twitched. I jumped back. Seeing this, Dennis up above started sobbing even harder, almost hysterically. I sprinted toward the blue door we had come through and started yanking the handle. It wouldn't open. It was jammed shut. I turned around and froze. The corpse was standing up, her bones crunched, her joints bending at unnatural, contoured angles as she slowly pushed herself to her feet. She turned and walked to the edge of the deep end, looking up at Dennis. He stopped crying. He was kneeling, staring right back at her. "Dennis! Dennis!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. "Get away from her!" But he didn't even turn around. They just stood face to face, separated only by the drop of the pool. The absurdity of the situation was driving me insane. This is a prank, I thought. It is some sick joke to scare me. I exhaled in relief. You guys are crazy, you idiots. I almost died on a heart attack. Dennis didn't answer. He reached out and slowly, gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind the corpse's ear. "She is unique," he said. His voice was completely hollow, hypnotized. In that moment, I knew this wasn't a prank. I had to run. I dashed toward a broken window on the second level of the gym. I threw my bag of mats through it and tried to jump up to grab the seal. I couldn't reach it. I was shaking so violently with fear, I thought my heart would give out. And then I heard the wet slaps of bare feet on the tiles. They were getting closer to me. I turned around. The corpse was walking straight toward me, and now I saw that it wasn't even human. Her face was no longer pretty. It was twisted into a monstrous, grotesque grimace. Her jaw hung slack, and her dead, glassy eyes stared right through me. She tilted her head to the side at an impossible angle, as if studying me with curiosity. And then Dennis spoke again, in that same dead voice. "She wants to be friends. She's nice." The pure panic gave me strength. I spotted some old wall bars bolted to the concrete. I scrambled up them and lunged for the window. My hands gripped the wooden frame. A jagged piece of glass sliced deep into my right palm. Warm blood sprayed across the wall. I didn't feel the pain. I hauled myself over the sill and plummeted to the ground outside, smashing my chin against the concrete. I grabbed my bag and bolted to my mountain bike, pedaling frantically until my lungs were on fire. My grandmother was in shock when I burst through the door, covered in blood, my face smashed, sobbing hysterically. As soon as I could breathe, I begged her to call the state police to the camp anonymously. I didn't even pack my things. I just grabbed my bag and paid the guy I knew $100 to drive me to the Greyhound station. I got on a bus, crossed state lines, and now I'm hiding at home. My hand is wrapped in bandages and I can't sleep. I keep refreshing the local news on my phone. I wonder if the police found Dennis by that empty pool, and if they did, is he still alive?